clearly, there are those that are specifically called of God in specific areas of ministry and with special gifts. It is also very apparent that God can use anyone at any time to do anything. So, in looking at creating an atmosphere for miracles, how can we be ready to see miracles happen in our midst? So we're going to start and just kind of build a little background before we nail down on our primary topic. And our lesson title today is Bringing It With You. And we're going to start, we are called, and I want to look at bringing it. Genesis, I'm going to reference several scriptures here just so you can see this. Genesis 1:11, and God said, "Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth." And it was so. Then later in Genesis 1:20, and God said, "Let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and fowl, that they may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven." Later in verse 24, and God said, "Let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, cattle, and creeping thing, and beast of the earth after his kind," and it was so. Now, after the fall in Genesis 3:16, God says unto the woman, he said, "I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception in sorrow. Thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee." Then a couple verses later, he says, "Thorns also and thistles shall it bring forth to thee, and thou shalt eat the herb of the field." And that's 3:18, by the way. And then a few chapters later, Genesis 8:17 says, "Bring forth with thee every living thing that is with thee of all flesh, both of fowl and of cattle, and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, that they may breed abundantly in the earth, and be fruitful, and multiply upon the earth." And then finally in Genesis 9:7, "And you be fruitful and multiply, bring forth abundantly in the earth, and multiply therein." And all I'm trying to tell you, and there's many verses, but I'm just trying to let you know that there's this idea of bringing forth, bringing with, bringing along that exists when talking about man in the Bible. We could go into Noah and bring two of each creature, and all, so there's all different references there. But then I also want to look at the purpose in many instances of this bringing is for increase, or to be fruitful, or to multiply, or make more of kind of situation. And I'm just going to give you two quick references to that. And I already read the scriptures, but Genesis 8:17, where it says, "Bring forth with thee every living thing that is with thee of all flesh, both of fowl and of cattle, and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, that they may breed abundantly in the earth, and be fruitful, and multiply upon the earth." And in Genesis 9:7, "And you be ye fruitful, and multiply, bring forth abundantly in the earth, and multiply therein." So there's this idea of bringing it, and there's this idea of an increase. And we're going to tie this all together in a few moments. Just bear with me. We've laid the foundation for that, this idea of bringing it, and for the purpose of multiplication or increase, fruitfulness. We're going to look at Matthew chapter 21, verses 18 through 22. And it says, speaking of Jesus, "And when he saw a fig tree in the way, he came to it, and found nothing thereon but leaves only, and said unto it, Let no fruit grow on thee henceforth forever. And presently the fig tree withered away. And when the disciples saw it, they marveled, saying, How soon is the fig tree withered away? And Jesus answered and said unto them, Verily I say unto you, if you have faith and doubt not, you shall not only do this which is done to the fig tree, but also if you shall say unto this mountain, Be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea, it shall be done. And all things whatsoever ye shall ask in prayer, believing, ye shall receive. And there's another account of this story where it says Jesus was hungered and came looking happily at the fig tree to see if he could find some food, some figs, something to eat. And I'm not going to spend time necessarily referencing that one directly, but I just want you to understand that there's some seasons that we need to talk about here with the fig tree. And boy, if you want to see mental gymnastics done, do a study on what does this whole story with the fig tree mean. I mean, there's 87,000 different directions people come at this story. And so I'm going to come at it from maybe 87,001 directions. We'll see. But it says, as I said before, there's one reference that talks about Jesus is hungry. He is searching for, he's craving sustenance, okay? And it also says that it was not the season for figs. So those are the two caveats that I want to lay out there, is that Jesus hungered and it wasn't the season for figs, all right? And we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail here as we go. So, and when 19, and when he saw a fig tree in the way, he came to it and found nothing thereon but leaves only. Okay, leaves only. There were leaves and like flowers, and that's it. Looked good, but there was no substance. And I'm told that figs, well, before the season of the true harvest of figs, when they're ripe and ready, they actually have little buds that turn into an edible piece of fruit prior to the full fig coming on. And so if you saw a fig tree and it was not in season, it doesn't mean that it wouldn't have something on it that you could go partake of. That's what I'm told. And but Jesus found nothing when he looked at this tree. Maybe he had some promise. The leaves and the flower had a little bit of promise, but they didn't have any substance. It didn't have anything to quench his hunger. And that's really where I want to start to move towards our idea of bringing it with you. You could say, well, it's not fair to the fig tree that he was upset because it wasn't fig season. But see, it should have had something. And it should have had more than it just looked good. And it's important that it says he hungered, because it means he had need or want for something. And we've been talking about an atmosphere for miracles. We've been talking about the things that we need to do in order to have that atmosphere for miracles. But part of it is just us. What are we bringing with us to the service? There are those that will come hungering for something. There are those that will come looking for something. There are those that will come in need of something. And yet, for most of us, when we come to church, are we just filling out an attendance sheet? Oh, I'm here. I made church. I did good. I sang 3 songs. Or are we coming to offer something? Are we coming so that if somebody is hungering, that we would have something to give them? Are we just coming with our flower and our leaves? Or do we have some substance to give? Now, you look at the pastor, you expect him to come ready to give. You don't expect him to come looking for, I really need ministry today. I really need somebody to minister to me today because I'm really flat. And I'm not putting down people who have need. But see, if you're going to come to church with the attitude that you have something to give, you need to work out those issues during the week. And there's a difference in preparing to go to church looking for something versus going to church prepared to give something. Ministry is a different situation, and not every single person is called to ministry in the same way. Not every person is called to preach. Not every person is called to pray at the altar. Not every person is called, but God can use anyone at any time for anything. So the reality is that if I come to church with the idea of what am I going to get, instead of what can I give, we come with the wrong attitude. If we want to see God moving, we need to come with the attitude of what can I give. You know, I grew up just fanatical about sports. And, in baseball, they talk about being prepared mentally, particularly if you're playing a position like third base, which I would never be good at. But anyway, if you're playing a position like third base, the question is, what are you going to do if the ball's hit at you? Well, if you're playing third base, the ball's going to get hit at you, pretty much guaranteed. At some point, you're going to have the ball hit at you, and probably pretty hard. Well, if there's a runner on, where are you going with the throw? What are you doing? What are you thinking? Where's that ball going to go? And, a good third baseman is sitting there ready to make the play, and he's thinking, hit the ball to me, hit the ball to me. A bad third baseman's standing down there going, please don't let him hit the ball to me. Please don't let him hit the ball to me. Right? So when you walk into church, are you saying, man, I hope I have an opportunity to minister to somebody? Or are you saying, oh, man, I hope nobody needs anything because, boy, I sure don't have anything to give? Which way are you coming? Are you bringing the miracle with you? Or are you just leaves and flowers? That's really the question. Where are you at? And so let's look at this again. It says, and when he saw a fig tree in the way, he came to it and found nothing thereon but leaves only. And he said unto it, let no fruit grow on thee here henceforward forever. And the fig tree withered away. You say, that's kind of harsh. Well, see, here's the thing. If your purpose is a fig tree and you're all show and no go, you're worthless. You're not offering anything. And that's what that comes down to. And I'm not trying to call anybody worthless. I'm just saying we need to think about the fact that if we want to see God move, we need to be prepared to do our part. We need to be prepared to participate on the level that we can participate on in order to make ourselves available to God. And in verse 21, Jesus answers and says unto them, verily I say unto you, if you have faith and doubt not, you shall not only do this thing which is done to the fig tree, but you shall also say unto this mountain, be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea, and it shall be done. If you have faith, we've talked about that, the element of faith in miracles, and our faith is in Jesus Christ. He's the author and finisher of our faith. That's where our faith comes from. And don't doubt. We talked about the power of doubt to screw things up. So if you have faith and don't doubt, not only will you be able to do this which is done to the fig tree, but you'll be able to say to the mountain, be thou removed and thrown into the sea, and it shall be done. And all things whatsoever you shall ask in prayer, believing, you shall receive. And believing is there. All things you shall ask in prayer, believing means entrusting to Christ, putting in trust to God. You say, well, I'm not, it's not my season. That excuse didn't work for the fig tree. But see, the problem was it wasn't the season for figs. The fig tree wasn't prepared. In fact, the fig tree was prepared to do nothing because it didn't even have the pre-fruit, if you will. Why? Because when I'm looking what is I'm ready to do, I'm looking at myself. When I'm entrusting what needs to happen to Christ in faith, then it's his season, not mine. Then it's the ability to give whether I'm quote unquote ready or not. You know, you've heard it talk about, be instant in season and out. Well, what does that mean? It means I'm prepared and trusting Christ to provide whatever is necessary. If you open your mouth, he'll fill it. What does that mean? I'm entrusting Christ to give me what I need to minister out to somebody at a given time, and I don't have to go through a bunch of spring training to get in condition for the game. I'm already in condition. Why? Because I'm prepared. Why? Because I brought it with me. I brought the faith with me. I brought the preparedness to be used of God with me, the trusting in him that, hey, whatever needs to happen, he's going to take care of it. And I have to work some things out in my own life at home privately before I ever get to church, probably to be in that situation. So I'm not diminishing the power of being together in the church. I'm not diminishing the power of being here at the altar. What I'm saying is if we want to see miracles, we need to make sure that each of us is ready to do our part, not just be leaves and flowers. We have ministers that are famous because of the things that happen in their ministry. I think of all the salvations under Billy Graham. And you can look at the ministries of miracles and all these different things. Wow, when so-and-so does worship, it is just the most amazing thing. Well, there's people that are gifted from God in certain areas. But here's the other thing. I traveled for a long time. I grew up traveling. I grew up, ministering in churches at a very young age. And here's the thing. When we walked into a church to minister, we were the special guests, right? We were there to sing or preach or whatever it was we were there to do. But when we walked in ready, prepared to give out. We might have had a tough day getting there. We might have had problems with the vehicle. We might have had, personal conflict or whatever. But we made sure that our hearts were right, that we had prepped during the week, that we were ready to minister when we got there. When we walked in, we expected to see God move. We expected God to use us. We expected to be called on to minister. We weren't just leaves and flowers. And people coming when it's a special guest, quote unquote, a lot of times come expecting to see God do something too. So your expectations on both sides are high. But you're bringing an atmosphere of expectation. Now, some of it is totally outside of your direct control. You're just a special guest. But people have an expectation they're going to see something. Well, when you come to church, do you come expecting to see God move? Do you come prepared to see miracles? Do you come prepared to be used if God chooses to use you this day to speak that word? Uses you this day to give that prophecy. Uses you this day to pray that prayer of healing. How do you come? Do you come prepared? Are you bringing it with you? Now, he says that if you say unto the mountain, be thou removed, it should be removed and cast into the sea, and it shall be done. I want to look one other verse, and it may seem a little bit non sequitur or related for a minute here, but I think we'll be able to see this when we're all done. This is in 1 John 3 and chapter 3 and verse 8. He that committeth sin is of the devil, for the devil sinneth from the beginning. For this purpose the Son of God was manifested, that he might destroy the works of the devil. In other words, Jesus came to undo the works of the devil. In fact, the word there is loosed. He's manifest here that he might destroy or loosen the hold of the devil. He might loosen the works of the devil. He might loose people from the bonds of Satan. And our verse that we talked about in Matthew 21, when he said, but if you say unto this mountain, be thou removed, the word removed there also means loosed, unanchored, set free. See, what we're talking about is a situation where if we come prepared, if we're not just leaves and flowers, if we are prepared to give forth what God has given us, and we're trusting that God is where we're going to get that from, that he is our source for whatever he wants us to do, and if we're going to be walking in step with what Christ was called to do, if we're going to be Christians like Christ, then we need to be prepared to loose people from the devil. We need to be prepared to loose problems and have them cast into the sea. We need to be prepared. Well, what does that require? It requires believing. It requires entrusting to Christ the problem, entrusting to Christ the miracle, entrusting to Christ the salvation, and being prepared to give out of that. Coming to church with the attitude, I'm ready, God, to be used however you see fit. Now, you might come in, and for 12 months, you might come every Sunday with the right attitude, God, I'm ready to be used, and you may not get used at all. And then he may use you in a mighty way one day. And you may not even see it. Maybe it'll be a really small way. Maybe it's a simple word. Maybe it's a simple prayer. But you don't know what God's going to do with that. Why? Because he brings the increase. You're just supposed to be fruitful. Not just leaves and flowers, but be fruitful. In other words, have substance to give. Well, it's all about God. It all comes from him. What could my substance be? Wouldn't it be my faith? Wouldn't it be my allowing God to work through me? Wouldn't it be my believing and entrusting the situation to God? Wouldn't that be my fruitfulness? And let it be multiplied. Let it be built up. Well, how could I do that in a church setting? Well, if I come faith believing, if I come ready, if I come expecting, and I'm available to give out, and other people are available to give out, then the Bible talks about encouraging one another. In other words, what's the purpose of that? To build our faith. Isn't that multiplying? My testimony maybe is a piece that brings someone to the altar and they get saved. And then they come with a different attitude. They come expecting. They come ready to give out. And then we're multiplying. We're being fruitful and we're multiplying. But it starts with bringing. What am I bringing? Am I just phoning it in? Am I just coming completely wrapped up in myself? I just want to see what's going to happen. I just want to see the show. I thought they could have sang that third worship song just one more time. Would have been good. Could bring my critique. Am I thinking about it? Wow, the Blessed-tron operator was a little slow getting that verse up there. Or am I lost in worship because my heart is compelled to worship and give praise and honor to God? Am I there with the attitude that I want to see how I can help? I want to see what I can do. I want to see where I can best give. I thought about calling this Bring Your A Game, but when you're talking about miracles, I don't think there should be any game involved. It should just be the power of God moving. No gamemanship. Just hearts that are right, sacrifice that's ready. It's not easy to be in a position where you're ready to minister all the time. Well, God does his part. But it's not easy for us to check our attitude at the door, so to speak. It's not easy to, hopefully I've done all this throughout the week, but when I get to the day of situation, it's not easy to sometimes put aside whatever just happened, the car that pulled in front of you, whatever it might be that has caused you to go off your, normal path. What do you do in order to bring yourself into proper attitude? That's really the question. What do I have to do in order to get myself right? Well, see, that might be a sacrifice. And the note I made here is a sacrifice of reasonable service. If I'm going to be available to God, if I'm going to be available for ministry, isn't it reasonable that I bring that sacrifice, whatever it might be, to get my heart right, my attitude right, my expectation right, that I'm entrusting it to God, that I'm believing God for it? Isn't that really my reasonable sacrifice? We want to see God move. We want to see miracles. We want to see those things happen. But are we willing to make that reasonable sacrifice to make it happen? See, the problem is, as human beings, we can justify anything we want. And so we can make our reasonable sacrifice seem like too big a thing. We can make it seem like it's just asking me to do so much, when in fact I'm not being asked to do much at all. It's reasonable. It was reasonable that when Jesus was hungry and looked on the fig tree and saw the leaves, it was reasonable for him to say, there should be fruit. But it had all show and no go. It was just leaves and flowers. It didn't have anything of substance. It wasn't prepared to give. It wasn't in season. That's its excuse. It's not my season. But if I'm entrusting God, I can be ready in season and out. But I need to bring that attitude of God's sufficiency, God's ability to provide. I need to bring that attitude, and I need to bring an attitude of service. I'm ready to do whatever you need me to do, God. Like Isaiah, you can say, here am I, send me. And I hope that with this lesson, that it'll change the way you walk in the doors of the church, wherever you go to church, that it'll change the way you walk in the doors to that church, that you'll come with an attitude that I'm ready to bring it. I'm ready to be used in whatever capacity I need. Now, we've covered in this series an atmosphere for miracles, the idea of creating that atmosphere, and we've talked about the relationship to Christ being key. It's our relationship. It's the purpose of what's going on. We've talked about our faith being built because Jesus Christ is the author and finisher of our faith. We've talked about a thankful attitude and worshipful attitude as we have hearts that are right and recognizing Christ and God's work in the whole process, that he's the source of it all. We've recognized that. We've also talked about the manifest presence of God. And last week we talked about just the preciousness of his presence, all things that need to be there. And I think, at this point, when we talked about an atmosphere for miracles, we have set in this teaching, we have set up all the pieces and parts for you to have an atmosphere for miracles, for you to have a way to walk in the doors expecting to see God move. And I believe God is going to move. You're going to see his Spirit poured out in these days, in these times. And I'm not a believer in formulas where, you check off the boxes, and if you do that, then that's it. Prophecy is going to happen or whatever. But I do believe heart attitude is critical. And I do believe honesty and authenticity before God is critical. And I believe tying things to relationship with Christ is critical. We can create this atmosphere. We can create the opportunity for God to move. And one of the great ways we can do that, and why I saved it for last, is that we can have a right attitude when we walk in the door to be used of God to do the miracles that day. I don't come to see the show. I don't come to be the show. I just come willing and ready to be used of God as he sees fit, as a servant to Jesus Christ. That's the right attitude for us to have. We're going to get ready and transition some things over the next few weeks. We'll be starting a new series. I'll talk about that more next week. We're going to start a new series. We're going to wrap this one up today. And we're also looking very much at some point in the near future, don't know exactly when, being able to return to live Sunday school. Hopefully we'll be able to keep the whole video side of it going smoothly as well. I'm excited for what God's going to do. I'm excited for where we're going. And honestly, I'm excited about an atmosphere for miracles so we can see God's Spirit poured out in our midst, in our time, in this generation. And that's it for this week.